The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It stretched for miles in every direction, with seats rising up toward a ceiling that glowed with artificial stars. Representatives from over 200 different alien species sat in their designated areas, each one watching the center stage where important matters were discussed. Today, the hall was completely silent. Every eye, every sensor, every tentacle was focused on Ambassador Vorath of the Kelthari Collective. He stood at the central platform, his 4 yellow eyes moving slowly across the crowd. His gray skin reflected the soft light, and his long fingers tapped against the control panel before him. Vorath had requested this emergency meeting 3 days ago. The council had granted it because Vorath was known for being calm and logical. He never wasted anyone's time. If he said something was important, it was important. Fellow members of the Galactic Council, Vorath began, his voice translated into hundreds of languages by the machines built into every seat. I have called this meeting to discuss a matter that has troubled me for many years. A matter that should trouble all of us. He pressed a button, and a massive holographic map appeared above him. It showed a section of the galaxy filled with colored territories. Red for the Vrakan Empire, green for the Shuri Federation, purple for the Bloodstar Consortium. And there, in the middle of all these powerful nations, was a small patch of blue. "This is human space," Vorath said, pointing at the blue area. 17 years ago, this species emerged from their home planet called Earth. They were weak. Their technology was primitive. Their military was small. By all logic, they should have been conquered within the first year of their expansion into the galaxy. Murmurs spread through the hall. Many of the older representatives remembered those early days. The humans had seemed like easy prey. And yet, Vorath continued, "Look at them now." He pressed another button, and the blue area grew. It spread outward, touching the borders of the Vrakan Empire, the Devour Swarm territory, and the Crimson Fleet zones. 37 star systems now belong to the humans. They have built colonies on dozens of worlds. They have established trade routes through some of the most dangerous areas of space. They have mining operations in territories that border our most aggressive neighbors. Vorath paused, letting his words sink in. And in 17 years, not a single hostile force has successfully attacked them. High Councilor Miravel, the ancient leader who had guided the council for over 300 years, raised one of her many tentacles. Her body was mostly water, contained in a special suit that allowed her to survive outside her ocean home world. Perhaps they are simply lucky, Miravel suggested. The galaxy is vast. Not every species encounters hostility. Vorath shook his large head. With respect, High Counselor, luck does not explain this situation. Please look at their neighbors. He highlighted the territories surrounding human space. The Bloodstar Consortium has destroyed 14 civilizations in the last century. The Devour Swarm has consumed the populations of over 30 worlds. The Crimson Fleet attacks anyone who enters their region of space. These are not peaceful neighbors. These are the most dangerous powers in the known galaxy. The hall grew even more quiet. Everyone knew what Vorath was saying was true. Each of these powers has tested human borders, Vorath continued. Each of them has sent ships into human territory. And each of them has retreated without firing a single shot. I want to know why. Commander Zeth of the Vrakan Empire stood up from his seat. He was a massive creature, covered in thick green scales that could stop most weapons. His people were warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before the council was even formed. I can speak to this matter, Zeth said, his voice like rocks grinding together. 5 years ago, my fleet entered human space. We had 100 warships. They had a small colony on the planet they called Kepler Prime. Perhaps 10,000 humans lived there. He walked down toward the central platform. his heavy feet shaking the floor with each step. We followed standard protocol. Enter the system. Demand surrender. Destroy any resistance. It was supposed to be simple. Another conquered world for the Empire. Szeth reached the platform and stood next to Vorath. Even the calm Kelthari ambassador looked small next to the Vrakan warrior. We positioned our fleet around their planet. We activated our weapons. We prepared to send our surrender demand. Szeth paused, and something strange crossed his scaled face. It almost looked like fear. Then we received a transmission. He pulled out a small device and pressed it. A holographic image appeared, showing a human male. He was not tall or muscular. He wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. He looked like an ordinary person, but he was smiling. "You really don't want to do this," the human in the recording said. That was all. Just those 7 words. Then the transmission ended. The council waited for more. There had to be more. A threat, a weapon demonstration, something that would explain what happened next. "I ordered an immediate retreat," Szeth said. Gasps and whispers filled the hall. A Vrakan commander retreating? It was unheard of. The Vrakan never retreated. They would rather die than show weakness. "Explain yourself," demanded a representative from the Shuri Federation. "You had 100 warships. They had farmers and miners. Why did you run?" Szeth turned to face the crowd, and for the first time in his long career, he admitted something he had never told anyone. "I do not know," he said. "When that human looked at me through the screen, when he smiled and spoke those words, something inside me said to leave. It was not logical. It was not military strategy. It was pure instinct. Every part of my body told me that if I attacked those humans, something terrible would happen." He looked down at his clawed hands. "I have fought in over 200 battles. I have killed enemies twice my size. I have never felt fear. But when that human smiled at me, I was afraid." The hall erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions. Some demanded proof. Others accused Szeth of lying. But many sat quietly, remembering their own encounters with humans. Remembering moments when they too had felt something strange in the presence of these small, soft creatures from a distant blue planet. Vorath raised his hands for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "Commander Szeth's experience is not unique," Vorath said. "I have collected reports from 17 different species. All of them describe similar encounters. All of them felt the same unexplainable fear. All of them retreated." He turned off the holographic displays and looked directly at High Counselor Miravel. "Something is different about humans. Something we do not understand. They have no superweapons that we can detect. Their ships are not more advanced than ours. Their soldiers are not stronger or faster. But somehow, every species that has tried to attack them has failed." Miravel was quiet for a long moment. Her ancient eyes, hidden deep within her watery form, seemed to be looking at something far away. "What do you propose, Ambassador Vorath?" she finally asked. "I propose that we find out the truth," Vorath replied. "Before someone makes a mistake and starts a war that none of us can win." The council voted that day to begin an investigation into the human species. They would send observers, scientists, and diplomats. They would study these strange creatures who had appeared from them. Nowhere and somehow made the entire galaxy afraid to touch them. None of them knew that the answers they sought were hidden in the long and bloody history of a small planet called Earth. None of them knew about the millions of years of evolution that had shaped the human mind into something unique in all the universe. And none of them knew that the humans themselves had only recently discovered what they truly were. The mystery was about to be revealed, and when it was, the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The human colony world of New Haven orbited a yellow star much like Earth's sun. It was one of the first worlds humanity had settled after learning to travel between stars. The cities were clean and modern. The farms were green and productive. And the people lived peaceful lives far from the dangers of deep space. Captain Daniel Brooks sat in his office on the top floor of the Colonial Defense Building. He was 52 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. His uniform was simple, without the fancy decorations that officers from other species wore. He preferred it that way. He had never been a man who needed attention. On his desk sat an old photograph in a metal frame. It showed a young man in a different uniform, standing in front of a small spaceship. The ship was called the Horizon, and it had been humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. That young man was Daniel, 23 years ago. He picked up the photograph and stared at it. Today was the anniversary. 23 years since first contact. 23 years since everything changed. The door opened, and Lieutenant Maria Santos walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was 30 years old, born on New Haven. Part of the first generation of humans who had never seen Earth. She placed 1 cup on his desk and sat down across from him. "Thinking about the Zarathi again, sir?" she asked. Daniel nodded slowly. "Every year on this day, I remember. I think everyone who was there remembers." Maria had grown up hearing stories about first contact. Every human child learned about it in school. But hearing it from someone who was actually there was different. She leaned forward, ready to listen. "Tell me again," she said. "Tell me what really happened." Daniel set down the photograph and took a sip of his coffee. The memories were painful, but they were also important. Young people like Maria needed to understand. "We were mapping a region of space called the Andromeda Reach," he began. "It was supposed to be a simple mission. Go out, look around, come back. We had no weapons because we did not expect to meet anyone." He smiled sadly at that thought. How naive they had been. On day 47, our sensors detected something strange. Energy signals coming from a nearby star system. We went to investigate. Daniel paused, remembering the excitement of that moment. They had all been so happy to find evidence of alien life. When we arrived, we found them waiting for us. The Zarathi had been one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Their civilization was millions of years old. Their technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic to the humans. Their ships were beautiful, silver and white, glowing with internal light. When the Horizon came out of faster-than-light travel, over 1,000 Zarathi vessels surrounded it. "We thought we were meeting friends," Daniel said. "We sent greetings in every language we knew. We transmitted mathematical patterns, music, images of Earth. We did everything we could to show that we came in peace." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful colony below. Their response was not what we expected. They scanned our ship, studied our bodies through their sensors, and then sent us a message. Just a few words, translated into perfect English. Maria knew what the message said. Everyone knew. But hearing Daniel speak the words still sent a chill down her spine. "Surrender your population for processing, or face extinction." Daniel turned back to face her. "They saw us as resources, Maria. Nothing more. Our bodies contained materials they needed. Our planet was in a location they wanted. They had destroyed hundreds of species before us. We were just the next meal. The Horizon had tried to run. Their engines were no match for the Zarathi technology. Within minutes, the small human ship was caught in an energy field that stopped all movement. The Zarathi began their boarding operation. We had 47 crew members," Daniel continued. "No weapons except for tools and kitchen knives. No training for combat. We were scientists and explorers. We should have died within the first 5 minutes." He walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. When their boarding parties came through our airlocks, we fought anyway. It was stupid. It was hopeless. But nobody on that ship was willing to just give up and die. The Zarathi warriors were tall and thin, with 6 arms and skin that could stop bullets. They moved faster than humans could see. They had weapons that could cut through metal like paper. The first humans to meet them were killed instantly. But something happened during that desperate battle. Something that nobody expected. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering the moment that changed everything. Commander Patricia Holloway was in the engine room when they broke through. She was 45 years old, a grandmother who had pictures of her grandchildren taped to her workstation. When the Zarathi found her, she had nothing but a wrench in her hand. One of the alien warriors had cornered Patricia. Its blade was at her throat. It was ready to kill her like it had killed so many others across the galaxy. "I was there," Daniel said, his voice quiet. "I was hiding behind a machine, injured, watching. I saw what happened next." Patricia had looked the Zarathi warrior in its many eyes. She should have been terrified. She should have been begging for her life. But instead, she was angry. "She refused to die," Daniel said. "That is the only way I can describe it." Something changed in her face. Her fear disappeared and was replaced by something else. Something powerful. The Zarathi warrior had stopped. Its blade hand began to shake. Its many eyes widened in what Daniel could only describe as fear. "Then I felt it," Daniel continued. Everyone on the ship felt it. This wave of energy, coming from Patricia. It was like standing in front of a powerful wind, except it was not physical. It was something deeper. Something in our minds. The Zarathi warriors began to retreat. Not just from Patricia, but from the entire ship. They stumbled over each other, trying to get back to their boarding craft. The humans watched in confusion as the most advanced aliens in the galaxy ran from a grandmother with a wrench. Within an hour, the entire Zarathi fleet had left the system. They sent one final message before they disappeared. "This species is not to be touched." Maria sat in stunned silence. She had heard the story before, but Daniel's telling was different. More personal. More real. What was it? She asked. "What happened to Patricia?" Daniel shook his head. "We did not know at first. Patricia herself could not explain it. She said she just got angry. She thought about her grandchildren and how she would never see them again. She thought about all the humans on Earth who would die if we failed. And something inside her just pushed back." In the months that followed the Horizon incident, human scientists studied what had happened. They tested Patricia and the other survivors. They scanned their brains and measured their energy levels. Slowly, they began to understand. "Evolution," Daniel said. That is what they found. Millions of years of evolution on Earth, fighting predators, surviving ice ages, struggling through famines and wars. It did something to us. It made our minds different from any other species in the galaxy. He picked up the photograph again, looking at his younger self. Most species either fight or run when they face death. Their brains are built for one or the other. But humans evolved a third option. When we face extinction, when there is no way to run and no way to win, we do not give up. Instead, something inside us activates. Our will to survive becomes so strong that it projects outward. We can push our determination into the minds of others. Maria was beginning to understand. That is why aliens are afraid of us. They can sense it. Every species with any psychic sensitivity can feel what we carry inside us, Daniel confirmed. It is always there, quiet, waiting. The combined survival instinct of every human who ever lived. Every ancestor who refused to die. When we are pushed to the edge, that power wakes up. He stood up and placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. The Zarathi spread the word. They told every species they knew about the humans from Earth, about the power we carry, about what happens when you corner us. He smiled slightly. And that is why, in 17 years, nobody has dared to truly attack us. They know what waits for them if they do. Maria looked out the window at the peaceful colony. Children were playing in a park. Farmers were driving their vehicles to the fields. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. But inside every one of them was something extraordinary. Something forged by millions of years of struggle. Something that made even the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy think twice before raising a weapon against humanity. "We are not the strongest," Daniel said. "We are not the fastest or the smartest. But we are the most stubborn. And in a universe full of predators, that stubborn refusal to die is the greatest weapon of all." Maria nodded, finally understanding her own heritage. The legacy that flowed in her blood. The reason her people had survived in a dangerous galaxy. They were human, and they would never give up. In the darkest part of the galaxy, far from the light of friendly stars, the Devourer swarm was gathering. Their ships were not built from metal or plastic. They were grown from living tissue, massive organic creatures that swam through space like whales through an ocean. Each ship was connected to all the others through a mental link, creating a single mind spread across thousands of bodies. At the center of this fleet was the Swarm Queen. She had no single form. Her consciousness existed in millions of creatures at once. She could see through 1,000 eyes, think with 1,000,000 brains, and control her entire species with a single thought. For 500 years, she had led the swarm across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. 12 civilizations had fallen to the swarm. 30 worlds had been stripped of all life. Billions of beings had been processed into food for the ever-hungry fleet. And now, the Queen had chosen her next target, human space. The stories are lies, the Queen transmitted to her collective mind. No species has the power they claim. It is propaganda, designed to scare away enemies. We will expose the truth. Deep within her many minds, the Queen had studied everything known about humans. She had watched recordings of Rakan ships retreating. She had read reports from the Zarathi before they vanished from galactic politics. She had seen the evidence of something strange about these creatures from Earth, but she did not believe it. The swarm had faced psychic species before. They had consumed beings with mental powers far beyond any human could possess. Nothing had ever stopped them. Nothing could stop hunger. "Prepare the fleet," the Queen commanded. We moved toward human space. 1,000 ships began to move, their organic engines pushing them toward their destination. Inside each vessel, millions of drone creatures stirred, ready to descend upon a new world and consume everything living. On the border world of Sanctuary, the humans knew nothing of the coming storm. Their colony was small, only 50,000 people living in a green valley surrounded by mountains. They had farms and factories, schools and hospitals. It was a peaceful place, far from the politics and conflicts of the larger galaxy. Lisa Porter ran the colony's communication station. She was 34 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes from too many late-night shifts. She had come to Sanctuary 5 years ago, looking for a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. She had found it here, in this small community where everyone knew each other's names. It was late afternoon when her screens began to flash with warnings. Incoming ships, hundreds of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Lisa stared at the numbers in disbelief. This could not be right. There was no fleet in human space this large. She ran the scan again. The numbers stayed the same. Over 1,000 contacts, all of them heading towards Sanctuary. "Oh no," she whispered. Then she slammed her hand on the emergency alert. Alarms rang across the colony. People stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. They had practiced for this day, but none of them had truly believed it would come. Sanctuary was too small, too unimportant. Why would anyone attack them? Governor Vincent Gray was in his office when the alert sounded. He was 58 years old, thin and balding, a former accountant who had won the election because nobody else wanted the job. He had no military experience, no combat training, and no idea how to fight a war. But he was the leader of this colony, and his people were counting on him. He ran to the communications center and found Lisa at her station, her face pale. "What are we dealing with?" He asked. Lisa showed him the sensor data. The ships were organic, living vessels unlike anything human scientists had ever seen. But their energy signatures matched records from other attacked worlds. "It is the Devourer Swarm," Lisa said. "They are here to consume us." Vincent felt his heart stop for a moment. The Swarm. Everyone knew the stories. The species that ate everything in their path. The monsters that had never been defeated. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 6 hours. 6 hours. Not enough time to call for help. Not enough time to evacuate everyone. They had 20 small transport ships that could carry maybe 5,000 people. The rest would be left behind. Vincent made his decision quickly. Get the children on the transports first. Anyone who cannot fight goes with them. Everyone else stays. Lisa looked at him with surprise. "Sir, we have no weapons that can stop the swarm. Our defense forces are 50 people with small arms. What are we supposed to do?" Vincent did not have an answer, but he remembered the stories he had learned as a child. The stories about the Horizon and Commander Patricia Holloway. The stories about what humans could do when they had no other choice. "We are supposed to fight," he said. "And we are supposed to not give up. Whatever happens next, we do not give up." The next 6 hours passed in organized chaos. Parents said goodbye to children they might never see again. Transports launched toward the nearest human colony, carrying the youngest and oldest members of the community. Those who stayed behind gathered in the town center, waiting for their governor to speak. Vincent stood on the steps of the town hall, looking at the faces of his people. Farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers. Ordinary people who had come to Sanctuary looking for peace. Now they were being asked to face the worst enemy the galaxy had ever known. "I will not lie to you," Vincent said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "The Devourer Swarm is coming. They have destroyed civilizations much stronger than ours. By every logical measure, we cannot win this fight." He paused, looking at the sky where the first stars were appearing. "But we are not just any species. We are human, and humans do not give up. Not when there is still breath in our bodies. Not when there is still will in our hearts." He thought about everything he knew about human history. The ice ages their ancestors had survived. The diseases that had almost wiped them out. The wars and famines and disasters that should have ended the human story, but never did. "They think we are prey," Vincent continued. "They think we will run or beg or give up. Let us show them what happens when you corner a human. Let us show them why the oldest species in the galaxy whisper our name with fear." The crowd stood in silence for a moment. Then someone began to clap. Then more joined. Soon the entire town center was filled with applause and shouts. Not the sounds of people who had given up. The sounds of people who had decided to fight. The swarm arrived at dusk. Their ships filled the sky, blocking out the stars. They descended like a dark cloud, covering the mountains and the valley. The noise of their organic engines sounded like a billion insects screaming. The first wave of drones landed outside the town. They were horrible creatures, each one the size of a car, with blade-like limbs and mouths full of teeth. They moved in perfect coordination, controlled by the Queen's single mind. Lisa Porter stood at her station in the communications center as the drones broke through the walls. She had no weapon, No training, no way to defend herself. The first creature lunged toward her. Its blade arms raced to strike, and something happened. Something old and deep stirred inside Lisa. She thought about her mother, who had survived cancer. She thought about her grandfather, who had fought in wars on Earth. She thought about every ancestor in her bloodline. Stretching back millions of years, every one of them a survivor. She was not afraid anymore. She was angry. "No," she said, and her voice carried a weight that the simple word could not explain. The drone stopped. Its many eyes flickered with confusion. In his limited mind, controlled by the Queen from far away, something was wrong. The small creature in front of it was not acting like prey. It was not running or screaming or begging. It was staring at the drone with eyes full of fire. Lisa took a step forward. The drone took a step back. Across the colony, the same scene was happening again and again. Ordinary humans faced with certain death were discovering what they truly were. The power that had slept inside them was waking up. The combined will of every human ancestor who had ever refused to die was flooding through them. The swarm. Queen felt it through her connection to every drone. A wave of something she had never experienced before. A force that pushed against her mind, that made her instincts scream in warning. What are they? She demanded through her mental link. What is this power? Her drones began to retreat, stumbling over each other in their confusion. Some of them simply shut down, their simple brains overwhelmed by the psychic weight of human defiance. The perfect coordination of the swarm was breaking apart. Vincent Gray walked through the streets of his colony, watching his people stand against the invaders. Farmers with pitchforks, teachers with books, doctors with scalpels. Each one of them radiating that same incredible energy. The swarm had come to consume them. Instead, the swarm was learning why humans were never attacked, and the Queen, watching through her dying drones, felt something she had not experienced in 500 years of conquest. She felt doubt. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with more representatives than it had ever held before. Every species that could send a delegate had done so. The seats stretched up to the ceiling, packed with beings of every shape and size. All of them were there for one reason. The humans were coming to explain themselves. News of the sanctuary incident had spread through the galaxy like fire. The Devour Swarm, the most feared force in known space, had retreated from a small farming colony. Their 1,000 ships had turned around and fled. Their drones had been found dead by the hundreds, shut down by a force that no one could explain. For the first time in 500 years, the swarm had failed. Ambassador Varth stood at his usual spot near the central platform. He had spent the last week preparing for this moment. His investigation into human behavior had led him to request a meeting with human leadership. To his surprise, they had agreed to send someone. High Counselor Miravel raised her tentacle for silence. The hall grew quiet. Today, we welcome the first official human ambassador to the Galactic Council, Miravel announced. She has requested the opportunity to address this body directly. Please welcome Ambassador Helen Grant of Earth. A small door opened at the side of the platform, and a human woman walked out. She was not young, perhaps 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back from her face. She wore a simple black suit with no decorations. She looked completely ordinary. And yet, as she walked to the center of the platform, every being in the hall felt something. A presence. A weight. The same strange energy that the swarm had felt at Sanctuary. Helen Grant stopped at the speaking position and looked up at the assembled council. Thousands of alien eyes stared back at her. Creatures that could crush her with a single blow, that had weapons that could destroy planets, that had ruled the stars for millions of years. She smiled at them. "Thank you for having me," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I understand you have questions about my species." I am here to provide answers. Commander Zeth of the Vrakan Empire was the first to speak. You know why we are here. We want to know about your power, the force that stops armies, the energy that makes the swarm retreat. Helen nodded. Yes, I expected that question, and I will answer it. But first I need to explain something about where we come from. She pressed a button on her wrist, and a holographic image appeared above her. It showed a small blue planet covered with water and clouds. This is Earth, she said. Our home world. It is not a special place by galactic standards. Small, ordinary, unremarkable. But it has one important feature. It tried to kill us. The hologram changed to show images of Earth's history. Volcanic eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, floods and droughts and endless disasters. For millions of years, our ancestors survived on a planet that seemed designed to destroy them. They were not the strongest creatures. They were not the fastest. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no poisons. They should have died. She let that statement hang in the air. But they did not die. Instead, they evolved something new. Something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The hologram changed again, showing the inside of a human brain. Complex patterns of light moved through it, connecting different regions in ways that seemed almost random. Every other intelligent species in this hall evolved as either predators or prey, Helen continued. Your brains are designed for one of two responses when you face death. You either fight with everything you have, or you run with everything you have. This is normal. This is logical. She turned to face Commander Zeth directly. Humans are different. We evolved as persistence predators. We did not fight our prey. We did not chase them quickly. Instead, we followed them. For hours. For days. Until they collapsed from exhaustion. Our ancestors learned that if they simply refused to give up, eventually everything else would. The council listened in complete silence. This taught our brains something unusual, Helen said. When we face impossible odds, when there is nowhere to run and no way to win, we do not surrender. Something inside us activates instead. Our will to survive becomes so strong that it projects outward. She held up her hand, and for a moment, everyone in the hall felt that strange energy grow stronger. It was not painful or threatening. It was more like standing next to a fire, warm, powerful, undeniable. We call it many things. The human spirit, determination, stubbornness. But the effect is the same. When you threaten a human with extinction, you are not just facing one person. You are facing every ancestor who ever lived inside that person. Millions of years of survivors who refused to die. Vorath stepped forward, his four eyes wide. You are saying that your species developed psychic abilities through pure evolutionary pressure? In simple terms, yes, Helen replied. Though it is not quite like the psychic powers other species possess. We cannot read minds or move objects. We can only project our will, our absolute refusal to accept death. And when we do, it creates a force that affects every sensitive mind nearby. The Shuri representative raised her voice. But you have never used this power to conquer. You have never attacked other species. Why? Helen's expression became serious. Because we cannot control it. The power only appears when we truly believe we are facing extinction. It cannot be summoned at will for conquest or war. It exists only for survival. Attack us, and you will face it. Leave us alone, and you have nothing to fear. She looked around the hall again, meeting the eyes of beings who had lived for thousands of years, who commanded armies and ruled empires. Humanity offers friendship to every species willing to accept it. We want to trade with you, learn from you, work alongside you. We are not interested in domination or revenge. We just want to live and grow like everyone else." Her voice grew stronger. "But understand this clearly. We are not prey. We never will be. Every species that has tried to destroy us has learned this lesson the hard way. The Zerathi learned it 23 years ago. The Devour Swarm learned it last week." She let the words sink in. Inside every human, even the smallest child, lives the power to stand against extinction. It is our birthright, our inheritance from ancestors who survived ice ages and plagues and wars. When you look at us, you might see soft creatures with weak bodies. But inside those bodies is something that has been forged by millions of years of struggle. High Counselor Miravel finally spoke. "What do you want from this council, Ambassador Grant?" Helen smiled again. "I want you to understand us, to see us as we truly are, not as threats to be feared, but as partners to be welcomed. We have so much to offer. Our creativity, our adaptability, our endless curiosity. We want to explore the galaxy together with you." She paused. "But we also need you to understand what will happen if anyone tries to destroy us. Not as a threat, just as a fact. If you push humanity to the edge, if you corner us with no escape, you will face something that cannot be intimidated, something that refuses to die, something that will keep fighting long after any other species would have given up." The hall was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, High Counselor Miravel rose from her seat. Her ancient body, contained in its water-filled suit, moved down toward the central platform. She stopped in front of Helen Grant, two species meeting face to face. "Ambassador Grant," Miravel said, "speaking for the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to the community of stars. May your spirit be an inspiration to all of us." Helen bowed her head in gratitude. Behind her, on the holographic screen, the small blue image of Earth continued to spin. A small planet. An ordinary species. But inside them, something extraordinary. The vote that followed was unanimous. Full diplomatic recognition for humanity. Trade agreements. Exchange programs. All the rights and privileges of any member species that no one voted against. And as Helen Grant left the chamber, every being she passed felt that strange warmth, that undeniable presence, the weight of millions of survivors standing behind a single small woman from a distant, blue world. They had wondered why humans were never attacked. Now they knew, and they would never forget. 10 years had passed since Ambassador Helen Grant addressed the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Human colonies now dotted over 100 worlds. Human traders traveled freely through space that was once too dangerous to enter. Human diplomats helped negotiate peace treaties between species that had warred for thousands of years. The small blue planet called Earth had become one of the most respected voices in galactic politics. And yet, in a small town in the middle of Kansas, life went on much as it always had. Samuel Wright sat on the porch of his farmhouse, watching the sun set over his wheat fields. He was 72 years old, with wrinkled skin and rough hands from decades of working the land. He had never left Earth, never seen the stars up close, never met an alien in person. He was just a farmer, as his father had been, and his father before him. His daughter, Christine, was inside the house making dinner. She had moved back to the farm after her husband passed away, bringing her 2 children with her. Samuel was grateful for the company. The house had felt empty since his wife died. The screen door creaked open, and a small figure came running onto the porch. It was Katie, Samuel's 7-year-old granddaughter. She had her mother's red hair and her grandfather's stubborn chin. She climbed onto his lap without asking, the way she always did. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" Samuel put his arm around her. "You can ask me anything, little one." Katie looked up at the sky, where the first stars were starting to appear. "At school today, My teacher showed us pictures of aliens. She said they live on other planets really far away. That is true, Samuel said. She said that a long time ago, some of them wanted to hurt us. But they do not hurt us anymore. Katie turned to look at her grandfather with curious eyes. She said the aliens are scared of us. Is that true, Grandpa? Are aliens really scared of people? Samuel smiled and shifted Katie so she could see the sky better. Scared is not quite the right word. I would say they respect us. But why? We are just people. We are not big like the dinosaurs were. We do not have sharp teeth or claws or anything. Samuel thought about how to explain something so big to someone so small. He had heard the stories, of course. Everyone on Earth had. But he had never had to put them into words for a child. Let me tell you a story, he said. A long time ago, before there were any people at all, there were just animals living on Earth. Some of them were big and strong. Some were fast. Some had poison or sharp claws. They were all better at surviving than our ancestors. Katie listened carefully, the way she always did when her grandfather told stories. Our ancestors were small and weak. They did not have any of those special things. If you looked at them, you would think they would be the first ones to die. Every other animal was more dangerous than they were. But they did not die, Katie said. No, they did not. Because they had something the other animals did not have. They could look at something scary and dangerous and say, I am not going to give up. Even when things were really bad, they kept trying. They kept surviving. They were the most stubborn creatures on the whole planet. Samuel pointed up at the stars. Out there are beings who have been flying between stars for millions and millions of years. They have machines we can barely understand. They have powers that seem like magic. Some of them have conquered whole sections of the galaxy. He felt Katie shift in his arms, listening with wide eyes. But when those powerful beings look at us, at regular people like you and me, they see something that makes them careful. They see the children of survivors. They see millions of years of ancestors who faced terrible things and refused to give up. Katie thought about this for a moment. Is that why nobody attacks us? Because they can see that we do not give up. That is part of it, Samuel said. But there is more. When a human really believes they are going to die, when they have no way to run and no way to fight, something special happens inside them. All those ancestors, all those survivors from long ago, they kind of wake up. They give us strength, like superpowers? Samuel laughed softly. Kind of like superpowers? Except we cannot fly or shoot lasers from our eyes. We can just be really, really stubborn. So stubborn that even the scariest aliens in the galaxy decide it is not worth trying to fight us. Katie seemed satisfied with this answer. She snuggled closer to her grandfather, watching the stars multiply as the sky grew darker. Grandpa? Yes, I am glad we are stubborn. Samuel hugged her tighter. Me too, little one. Me too. Inside the house, Christine had finished making dinner. She stood at the window for a moment, watching her father and daughter on the porch. Through the glass, she could hear Samuel telling Katie about the old days, about how their family had farmed this same land for over 200 years. She thought about her great-great-grandmother, who had survived a flood that destroyed half the town. Her great-grandfather, who had fought in a war and came home with injuries that never fully healed. Her grandmother, who had raised 6 children alone after her husband died young. Survivors. All of them. An unbroken line stretching back through time to the very first humans who walked upright on the plains of Africa. Christine's own husband had died 3 years ago from an illness that came too fast to stop. She had wanted to give up then, to just stop fighting and let the grief take her. But something inside her had refused. Some voice from deep in her blood that said, "Not yet, Keep going. Survive. She understood now that voice was not just hers. It belonged to everyone who had come before her. Everyone who had faced the impossible and refused to surrender. The screen door opened and Katie ran inside, full of energy and questions. Mom, Grandpa says we are stubborn like superheroes. He says that is why aliens respect us. Christine smiled and knelt down to Katie's level. Your grandfather is right. But do you know what makes us even more special? Katie shook her head. We do not just survive for ourselves. We survive for each other, for our families, for people we have never even met. Christine brushed a strand of red hair from Katie's face. That is what makes humans different. We fight for more than just ourselves. Somewhere across the galaxy, a Vrakan commander was telling his crew to avoid human trade routes. Not because he was afraid, but because he had learned respect. In another part of space, Shuri scientists were studying human art and music, trying to understand the strange creativity that came from such a young species. On a dozen different worlds, beings who had once looked at humans as prey now looked at them as friends. And in a small farmhouse in Kansas, an old man and his granddaughter sat down to dinner with the rest of their family. They said grace, as they did every night, giving thanks for the food and the people they loved. They were not special people. They had no powers, no weapons, no armies. They were just a family, living ordinary lives on a small planet in an ordinary solar system. But inside each of them was something extraordinary. The inheritance of every human who had ever lived. The stubborn, unbreakable will to keep going no matter what. Outside, the stars shone down on the earth like they had for billions of years. Some of those stars now had human colonies orbiting them. Some had alien civilizations that whispered about the strange species from the third planet. And some were still waiting to be explored, to become part of humanity's ever-growing story. Katie looked out the window one more time before starting her dinner. Grandpa, do you think I will ever go to space? Samuel looked at his granddaughter, at the fire in her eyes, at the stubbornness she had inherited from generations of survivors. I think you can do anything you want to do, Katie. You are human. We do not know how to give up. Katie grinned and picked up her fork. Outside, the universe stretched on forever, full of wonders and dangers and mysteries waiting to be solved. Full of ancient species who had once thought humans were easy prey. They knew better now. And somewhere, across the vast distances of space, beings who would never visit Earth and never meet a human in person told stories to their own children. Stories about a small species from a distant planet. A species that should have been conquered, but never was. A species that refused to die. They wondered why humans never attacked. And then they learned the reason. The reason was simple. The reason was in every human heart, every human mind, every drop of human blood. The reason was that some creatures are simply too stubborn to kill. And humans were the most stubborn of all. The end.